It was a Friday afternoon in late October, just after 4 p.m., when I pulled into the driveway and noticed the envelope taped to our front door. A large manila folder, the kind Mark used to keep house project plans in. Except this one had my name scrawled across the front in bold, uneven ink. Vanessa. No honey, no V, just my name. Cold. Isolated. Lucy barked once from the back seat, tail wagging, unaware her world was about to unravel along with mine. I grabbed the envelope with trembling fingers, trying not to imagine what it contained, but my heart knew before I even stepped inside. The house was silent, too silent. No ambient music playing from the kitchen speaker. No low hum of Mark's sander from the garage. Just the creak of floorboards as I crossed the threshold. I dropped my purse, set Lucy's leash free, and stood there in the hallway, staring at the package like it might explode. I opened it with a letter opener from the drawer. Inside were dozens of printed screenshots, messages between me and Julian, our secret Facebook accounts, coded texts, flirty banter, and at the very back a note, written in my daughter's handwriting. You're not the mother I thought you were. Don't contact me again. Sienna. That was the moment something inside me collapsed. Not cracked, not bent, collapsed. I sank to the floor, the envelope slipping from my hands like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Lucy patted over and nudged my arm, whining softly, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. My throat tightened like it had been sewn shut with invisible thread. Not Sienna. Anyone but her. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. I crawled to the living room rug and curled up into myself, shielding my body as if from an attack, though no one was there. Just my mistakes. Just my lies. Just my daughter's silence echoing louder than any scream. I don't know how long I lay there. An hour? Maybe 2. The sun had dipped low behind the mountains by the time I sat upright, dazed and cold. I reached for my phone with a frantic desperation, dialing Mark first. Straight to voicemail. Then Sienna. Then Aiden. Voicemail. 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 I didn't even try Julian. I knew that door was already closed, maybe even bolted shut on both ends. I texted Mark simply, "Please call me. I can explain." Nothing. I followed it with, "I love you. Please don't shut me out. Please." Still nothing. The next ping I received wasn't from any of them. It was from a blocked number, just minutes before 7 p.m. Vanessa, I know everything. So do the kids. So does my mother. Your parents, too, as of 15 minutes ago. I've moved out. I'll be in touch through my attorney only. Enjoy your new life. Mark. I read it, then reread it, then felt the words burn through my retinas. He told everyone. My children. His mother. My parents. Even my father, who once told me I'd always be his best girl. What would he think now? I screamed into the silence. Loud. Gut-wrenching. Ugly. It was the kind of scream you didn't care if the neighbors heard. The kind of scream that came from knowing you'd finally gone too far. Upstairs, our bedroom door stood open. I walked toward it slowly as if walking through water. There, on the neatly made bed, was a white gift box with a thick red ribbon. My name was written on the tag. Inside, divorce papers. Not just documents, a declaration. That my family was over. That I had detonated everything. I clutched the box to my chest, fell to my knees, and wept like a child. I wish I could say that was the worst part, but the silence that followed that was worse. The silence of a family disappearing. Not with shouting, not with fury, but with absence. The kind of silence that wraps around your throat and whispers, "This is what you deserve." It's strange what the mind chooses to hold on to when everything else falls apart. In the middle of that unbearable silence, with divorce papers still sitting in the box beside me, I found myself remembering something so ordinary it was from the first week of April, just 6 months earlier. Mark had built me a new garden bench. It wasn't fancy, just reclaimed wood and natural stain, but it was perfect. He'd spent 2 weekends sanding it smooth and carving tiny mountain peaks into the backrest, knowing how I loved the way the Rockies looked at dusk. He never said anything poetic about it. He just grinned, handed me a glass of sweet tea, and said, "Try not to break this one when you get dramatic." And I had laughed. Genuinely. Back then, things were whole. Not perfect. No one's marriage ever really is, but steady. Comfortable. Safe. Mark worked as a lead consultant for a firm that specialized in eco-friendly construction. He'd helped rebuild schools after the Marshall Fire, and half the town still stopped him at the grocery store to thank him. I was proud of him, maybe too proud. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking he could ever be vulnerable or hurt. Our kids, Sienna and Aiden, were both away at college. They'd left that past August for the University of Washington, Sienna majoring in environmental policy like her father, Aiden trying his hand at engineering like he was born to build things. They shared a dorm floor, called us every Sunday, sent us blurry pictures of cafeteria tacos and campus squirrels. We missed them. Mark and I used to laugh at how quiet the house had gotten. I filled that quiet with Lucy, our golden retriever. She was only 4, but had the wisdom of a dog, twice her age. Every Tuesday and Thursday, on the days I didn't work from home for my interior design clients, I'd take her to the dog park just north of Mapleton Avenue, a small patch of fenced grass near the luxury apartments that towered too high over the neighborhood, all glass and cold metal. That's where I met Julian. It was early July. Summer had just settled in properly. Dry heat in the afternoons, the kind that baked the sidewalks but left the shade deliciously cool. I remember Lucy bounding toward another dog with wild excitement, and I followed, leash in hand, only to find myself standing across from a tall man in designer joggers and a heather gray hoodie, holding a retractable leash of his own. His dog, a border collie named Nico, was as sleek and perfectly behaved as a show dog. They made quite the pair. "Mine's the wild one," I said, breathless. "She thinks everyone's her best friend." Julian smiled, the kind of smile that feels rehearsed but still lands. "Nico could use a little wild. He's basically a furry accountant." We laughed. It was harmless. Just 2 strangers with dogs. Just 2 people passing time. Over the next few weeks, I saw him often. Always on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We started sitting on the same bench, letting the dogs run while we talked about nothing. Books, the heat, the best local coffee. It never felt like a flirtation. I even mentioned him to Mark, told him about this guy Julian with a dog that acts like a tax lawyer. Mark had chuckled and asked if Lucy was flirting again. I wish that had been the end of it, but the bench at the park became a kind of sanctuary. Somewhere I didn't have to be a wife or a mom or even Vanessa Cole. I could just exist. Listen to someone talk about their podcast ideas or their terrible landlord or what kind of sandwich Nico liked best. And then one day, maybe mid-August, Julian asked me a question that would change everything. "Have you ever seen the view from my apartment rooftop?" He said it casually, like someone offering gum. And I, foolish, lonely, maybe just curious, asked, "Which building?" "The tall one," he replied, nodding toward the glass tower just beyond the fence. "Penthouse floor." Something in me stirred. Not lust, not excitement. Something more dangerous. The craving to be unseen. To vanish from my own life for just a moment. "I should probably get home," I said, already regretting the pause that had come before it. He didn't push. Just smiled again like he knew I'd be back. And God help me, I was. We always think affairs begin with a kiss. They don't. They begin with a conversation we shouldn't linger in. A silence we let stretch too long. A door we don't quite close behind us. The next time we met at the park, it was early August. The air had turned drier, crisp in the mornings, but the sun still hung heavy in the afternoons. Julian wore the same hoodie. He always did. Gray, with a faded logo I never bothered to read. I wore Mark's flannel, the sleeves rolled twice, my hair tied up in a bun I hadn't refreshed since breakfast. We were sitting on the bench again, Lucy sprawled at my feet, Nico obedient as ever by Julian's side. I remember he handed me a cold bottle of water, unopened. "You looked flushed," he said. That shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. It felt like someone noticing me. Not just seeing me, but registering me. And that was the first line I crossed, quietly without realizing. The second came later that week. It was Thursday, August 10th. I remember the date because it was the same day Mark sent me a photo of a new custom table he was building for a client, one with a hidden drawer. For secrets, he joked. I didn't laugh. I didn't reply for 2 hours. That morning, Julian had waited near the far gate of the dog park instead of sitting. He waved me over. Hey, random, he said. Want to see something cool? I should have said no, but I followed him, Lucy trotting ahead as if she already knew the path. We walked just 2 blocks to his apartment building, a towering, modern slab of steel and glass, a contrast to the warm timber of my home. Come up for 5 minutes, Julian said. You've got to see the city from up here. The elevator ride was quiet. I kept telling myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just being curious, just being neighborly, just being stupid. His apartment was pristine. White counters, chrome fixtures, glass doors that opened onto a balcony with a view so sweeping it looked fake. I stood there, speechless. Julian offered to take a photo of Lucy against the backdrop of the mountains. I handed him my phone. Afterward, he showed me around, kitchen, study, bedroom. Everything curated. Clean, not lived in. I stayed exactly 11 minutes. When I got home, I said nothing to Mark. But I made his favorite lemon chicken that night, lit a candle, played old jazz while we ate. He looked up once during dinner and smiled. What's the occasion? Just Thursday, I replied. That was the moment I began cheating. Not physically, not yet, but spiritually, mentally, I had stepped into another life, and the door behind me didn't close. In the weeks that followed, things escalated fast. Julian texted me often, through our fake names, Eva and Jack. Just playful messages at first, then longer, more suggestive ones. Soon, he stopped texting and started inviting. Tuesdays, Thursdays, always when Mark was at work, always when Lucy needed her walk. The first time it happened, our first time, it was September 5th, a Tuesday. I remember it clearly because it rained that morning and I almost canceled. But Julian insisted, rain makes it cozy. I lied to Mark that day, told him I had an unexpected design consult in Denver. He kissed my cheek and handed me a thermos of coffee for the road. Julian didn't have coffee waiting. He had music playing, slow, deliberate, and wine open before noon. It was awkward, hesitant, then it wasn't. I didn't cry afterward. I didn't feel guilt, not then. What I felt was electricity, the rush of being someone else. Someone desired, chosen, unburdened by titles like wife or mother or Mrs. Cole. That night I came home early. I made Mark a steak dinner, watched his eyes soften as he told me about a difficult client. I nodded in all the right places, laughed when he needed me to, touched his hand across the table. We made love that night, and as terrible as it sounds, I was more attentive than I'd been in months. Mark didn't question it. He simply pulled me closer and whispered, I've missed you. And I closed my eyes and lied to his face. By the 3rd week of September, the affair had settled into a routine. Tuesdays and Thursdays, late mornings to early afternoons. I'd leave the house in workout clothes, leash Lucy, and text Mark something breezy like, taking her to the park, might swing by the co-op after. He always responded with a thumbs-up emoji or a quick drive safe. Never suspicion, never doubt. He trusted me completely, and that was the part that began to hurt. I remember one Thursday in particular, September 21st, Julian and I had just finished lunch in his apartment, the takeout containers still warm on the counter. We hadn't even put them away. I sat by the balcony door, staring out over the mountains, and he asked, Do you ever think about leaving? Leaving what? Your life. Starting fresh. You're too smart and too young to be caged. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I'm not caged, Julian. I chose this life. I built it. Yeah, he said, stepping closer, his voice lowering. But are you still in love with it? I didn't answer. I didn't know how. That night, I brought home sunflowers from the market. Mark was sanding a bench in the garage when I arrived. I kissed his cheek, handed him the bouquet, and said, "Just because." He looked at me for a moment, really looked and smiled. But there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Not warmth, not suspicion, something colder, calculating. I told myself I imagined it. The first real shift came the following week. Mark stopped texting during the day. No more mid-morning updates. No check-ins about dinner. Just silence. When I asked if everything was okay, he said he was swamped at work. Some green roofing proposal had hit a wall and needed reworking. I offered to bring lunch to the office. He declined. That Friday, he came home after 8 p.m. for the third time that week, claiming they were pulling late hours on a sustainability grant presentation. I believed him because I needed to, because I couldn't bear the irony of suspecting my husband of lying while I was sleeping with another man. But then came the coldness. Mark stopped reaching for me in bed. He stopped lingering after kisses. He stopped saying, "I love you" first. It wasn't dramatic, just quieter, emptier, like someone slowly backing out of a room without shutting the door behind them. And still I kept going to Julian, because in that silence I panicked. I clung harder. I played the doting wife even more. I cleaned the house obsessively, cooked elaborate meals I didn't eat, left sticky notes in Mark's briefcase with reminders like "You're amazing" and "Dinner's your favorite tonight." It was love bombing. I knew it, but I couldn't stop, because part of me knew the countdown had started. Then came October 6th. Mark didn't come home at all. I called twice. No answer. I texted, "Everything okay?" No reply. At 10:37 p.m., I got a single message. "Still at the office. Don't wait up." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I thought he was cheating. I would have deserved that, but because I knew something was happening behind the curtain. A shift. A pulling away. I sat in the kitchen, Lucy curled at my feet, and stared at our wedding photo on the fridge. Mark in a gray suit, me in a simple ivory dress, hair pinned with mountain laurel. We looked young, hopeful, invincible. Now I could feel it. The rope between us unraveling, thread by thread. Julian messaged me that weekend. "You seem distant. Everything okay?" I didn't reply, because for the first time in weeks I didn't want him. I wanted Mark. I wanted my husband to look at me again, like I was still the woman who knew the sound of his laughter and the rhythm of his heartbeat. But I had already traded all that for an afternoon view and a voice that told me I wasn't caged. And I was beginning to realize the cage wasn't Mark. It was me. October 20th, 2023. I remember the sky was overcast that morning, the kind of heavy gray that makes you feel like the day is holding its breath. I had taken Lucy out early, hoping to clear my mind before work. I was supposed to have a client consult at 11 a.m., but I canceled it last minute. My stomach had been churning since the night before, and I couldn't name why not yet. By the time I got home around 4 p.m., the envelope was already there, taped directly to the front door. The moment I saw my name, sharp and angry in blue ink, I knew. I knew this wasn't a bill or a flyer or a note from a neighbor. I knew it was the end because only endings show up like that, silent, unannounced, final. Inside the manila envelope were over 30 pages of printed screenshots. Messages between me and Julian. Our fake Facebook accounts. Hotel confirmations. A selfie I had stupidly taken of my feet up on his balcony railing. The city lights behind me. Something I never posted, but somehow he had it. At the very back of the stack was a single folded sheet of lined notebook paper. No header. No signature. Just 4 sentences, written in Sienna's distinct cursive. "You're not the mother I thought you were. I don't want to speak to you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to know who you become." I read it twice. Then I dropped the whole thing on the floor, knelt in the entryway, and tried to breathe. But the air wouldn't come. It was like drowning in open air. I don't remember how long I stayed there. Maybe 20 minutes. Maybe an hour. Lucy curled up beside me, sensing something had broken. Not bent. Broken. When I finally found the strength to stand, I went upstairs to the bedroom, our bedroom, and found the box. White, square, pristine, tied with a deep red ribbon. Inside, divorce papers, a formal cover letter from Mark's attorney, a neatly typed summary of assets, a checklist of upcoming court dates. No photos, no keepsakes, just a legal exorcism of a life I had spent 19 years building. I stared at the packet, then sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, no, as if that would rewind time. It didn't. Instead, my phone lit up. Blocked number. I hesitated before answering. Vanessa, the voice said, calm, clipped, devastatingly polite. Mark asked me to inform you that he has moved out. He signed a lease this morning. You'll be hearing from our office next week. Please do not attempt direct contact. I stammered, wait, he's okay? Please, just tell me he's okay. I'm not authorized to discuss anything personal, ma'am. But I can confirm that both of your children are aware of the situation, as are your parents. My knees gave out. I barely made it to the floor before the tears came. I tried calling Mark. No answer. I tried texting, please talk to me. Please tell me what you need me to do. Nothing. I called Sienna, then Aiden. Straight to voicemail. I left messages, choking, pathetic messages, promising them everything. Explanations, apologies, silence, whatever they needed. Then, finally came a text. From Mark. I know everything. So do the kids. So does my family. Your parents, too, as of 15 minutes ago. I've moved out. I'll be in touch through my attorney only. Enjoy your new life. I dropped the phone and screamed. Not quietly. Not gracefully. A raw, guttural scream that echoed through the empty house like an alarm that would never shut off. I tried calling my mom. She picked up, and before I could say a word, she started yelling. Not crying, yelling. She called me selfish, disgusting, a disgrace to our family. Then she hung up. When I called back, she didn't answer. I called Dad. He picked up. There was a long silence. I begged him to talk to me, to listen. I told him I made a mistake, but I was still his daughter. His voice cracked. I never thought, he said slowly, that you'd be the one to ruin what the rest of us worked so hard to protect. He didn't yell. He didn't say goodbye. He just hung up. That night, I sat in the kitchen with every light off, listening to the tick of the clock and Lucy's soft breathing. No one called. No one texted. And for the first time in my life, I realized what it meant to be truly alone. Not alone like no one in the room. Alone like no one left who still believes in you. The days that followed blurred together, silent, gray, and strangely mechanical. I fed Lucy. I made coffee I didn't drink. I walked past empty picture frames, too numb to take them down, too ashamed to leave them up. By October 25th, I had stopped texting the kids, stopped calling Mark, stopped hoping. Then came Sunday, October 29th, a day I hadn't realized was so close until I opened the fridge and saw the magnet that still held last year's card. Happy Mother's Day to the best woman we know, love, Sienna and Aiden. A construction paper heart still hung from its corner. I stood there, barefoot, hand resting on the handle of the fridge, heart hollowed. No texts, no flowers, no breakfast in bed, just silence, and Lucy's eyes watching me, confused by the tension in the air she couldn't name. Mother's Day had always been special in our house. Mark would cook pancakes, Sienna would make those terrible poems with too many adjectives, and Aiden would give me a hug so tight it felt like forgiveness for every mistake I'd ever made as a parent. This year there was nothing. No knock on the door. No voicemail. No note slipped under the welcome mat. I sat on the couch and watched the morning light creep across the rug like it didn't care whose day it was. I held my phone in my hand for 3 hours, waiting for it to vibrate. I even texted Aiden one word, thinking of you. He left it on read. When night finally fell, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Out of instinct more than desire, I searched for articles about how to earn forgiveness from your children. I read every word like scripture, highlighting lines that didn't apply to me and skipping the ones that did. Somewhere in the early morning hours, I found myself staring at a blank email draft. Subject line, I'm sorry, but I didn't know how to begin. Because what was I sorry for? For the betrayal? Yes. For the lies? Of course. But also for becoming the person I never thought I'd be. The kind of woman I used to swear I'd never forgive if she were someone else's mother, someone else's wife. That night, I crawled into bed still wearing my robe, Lucy curled behind my knees, her body warm, her breath steady. And for a fleeting second, just one, I imagined it had all been a nightmare. That when I woke up, I'd find Santa making coffee, Mark flipping pancakes, Aiden stealing bites with a fork before the syrup was even poured. But morning came, and the house was still empty. The mailbox held nothing but grocery coupons and a utility bill. The flowers on the porch had wilted, and I, Vanessa Cole, was no longer a mother anyone celebrated. Later that week, I reached out to my sister. I thought maybe she of all people would be the bridge back, the one who remembered me before all this, the one who once said I was the strongest woman she knew. She didn't answer my call, but she did reply. One line. Actions have consequences, Ness. Welcome to yours. It was the second week of November, around the 12th, I think, when I noticed something was off. I'd been exhausted for days, nauseous every morning, but I chalked it up to stress. My body had been through so much in the last month, grief, anxiety, shame. I assumed it was just more of the same, until I missed my period, and then another. On the morning of November 14th, I stood in the downstairs bathroom, staring at a plastic stick on the counter. 2 pink lines. Clear, defiant, absolute. I dropped to the cold tile floor. My stomach twisted. My brain raced. It's too late for this. I don't get to be blessed. I took 3 more tests over the next 2 days. Different brands, different stores, just in case the universe had made a mistake. But they all told me the same thing. I was pregnant. After 15 years of trying, after failed IVF, 2 miscarriages, a doctor who once gently said, it might be time to consider peace with what you have. Now, when everything was already in ruins, I was carrying life. And I didn't know who the father was. I panicked. My first instinct was to tell Mark. But how could I? What if the child wasn't his? What if I gave him hope and it turned to ash? So instead, I did something I promised myself I'd never do again. I tried to contact Julian. He had me blocked. Our fake Facebook accounts were gone, deleted the week after everything imploded. But I remembered where he worked, some sleek, open-concept tech firm downtown. I waited outside one morning, watching for his familiar stride, his black messenger bag, the smug slouch of his shoulders. He spotted me before I could call out. He didn't stop. He didn't even flinch. I followed him halfway up the block before he turned and hissed, "What the hell are you doing here?" I told him I was pregnant. He froze, and then he laughed, a bitter, cynical bark that cut straight through me. "You're joking." "I'm not." His face darkened. "Well, it's not mine." "I don't know that yet," I said, voice shaking. He muttered a string of curses, hands flying into his hair. "You're not going to baby trap me, Vanessa. Don't even try." "I'm not trapping anyone," I snapped. "I just need to know. That's it." He looked away. "It's not mine." "You don't know that." "I do. I'm asking you to take a paternity test." He scoffed. "Get Mark to raise it. That's what you wanted, right? Family back together. Perfect little miracle baby tied in a bow." I stepped closer. "If you don't come with me to the clinic, I'll walk into your HR office and tell them everything you were doing during your salaried work days." That got his attention. The next day we met at the clinic. He didn't speak a word to me. He gave his saliva. I gave my blood. It took a week to get the results. Those 7 days were hell. I barely slept. I barely ate. Every prayer I'd ever learned returned to me in desperate fragments. Please God, not his. Please God, not his. Then the call came. Julian wasn't the father. I collapsed to my knees in the kitchen, sobbing into my hands. And for the first time in weeks, I whispered a thank you to the silence. Mark still had me blocked. I didn't even know where he was living. I sent Sienna and Aiden a single message. I have something important to tell you. Please call. Sienna replied first. What is it? I'll tell you both at the same time. That evening, we had a three-way call. My voice trembled as I said it. I'm pregnant. It's your father's child. Silence. Then Sienna said, no, it's his child. That guy. The one you destroyed our family for. It's not, I said. I had the test. Julian isn't the father. Sure, Aiden muttered. Because you say so. No, I said. I had it done at a lab. I have the paperwork. Neither believed me. You're trying to trap Dad, Sienna said coldly. He's finally free, and you're using a baby to reel him back in. I'm not, my voice broke. This wasn't planned. I would never, Aiden cut in. We'll ask Dad. Let him decide if he wants to talk to you. And they hung up. Just like that. I didn't sleep that night, either. But in the morning, my phone buzzed. A voicemail from Mark's attorney. She confirmed he was aware of the pregnancy, and he wanted a formal paternity test. He wouldn't come to the clinic with me. He wouldn't speak to me directly, but he'd give a sample. Privately. Legally. I agreed. I scheduled the test. Paid for it myself. Mark never showed up, but his attorney later confirmed the test was done. Results would arrive in 5 days. 5 days of pacing, of panic, of hope clawing at my throat. And then, confirmation. Mark was the father. I clutched the envelope like it was scripture. I wanted to run, to find him, to scream through whatever walls he'd built around his heart. But all I could do was wait. December arrived like a judgment, sharp, cold, unforgiving. The first snowfall hit on the 3rd. I remember watching it from the kitchen window as flakes drifted silently past the empty wind chimes. I used to love snow. Mark would build ridiculous igloos in the backyard with Aiden. Sienna would beg to decorate the porch with string lights before Thanksgiving even ended. Winter used to mean warmth. Now it felt like punishment. On December 5th, I received a certified letter from Mark's attorney. It was official. He was proceeding with the divorce. Despite the confirmed paternity, despite everything I'd said, everything I'd promised, he was cutting all legal ties. Clean, surgical, final. The letter was polite, emotionless, just like the man I'd once called my home. But what broke me, what truly shattered me, was the court date. December 19th, the week before Christmas. We used to have a tradition, Mark, the kids, and I. We'd open one gift on the 19th every year, a silly thing, something small. Socks, candy, a shared inside joke. We called it Just Because Day. It wasn't even about the holiday. It was about love. Now it was the date I would sign my family away. I called his attorney's office 3 times that week. Not to contest the divorce, no. I had accepted that part. I just wanted one conversation with him. Just one moment to explain, to apologize out loud, without papers between us. Each time I was denied. The only response I got was through email. Mr. Cole is not open to direct contact. All communications must go through this office. I wrote him a letter anyway. Handwritten. 6 pages. I didn't beg. I didn't grovel. I just told him the truth. About the emptiness, the self-doubt, the longing to feel alive, the sickness I felt now every time I thought of Julian's name. I told him about the baby, about how I had wanted this child for so long, but never like this, never through betrayal. I ended the letter with, You don't have to forgive me. You don't even have to see me again. But please know this baby is yours. And so is my deepest regret." I never got a reply. December 19th came. I wore black, not because it was formal, but because it felt like a funeral. The courthouse was nearly empty, just a few clerks, a sleepy security guard, and us on opposite ends of a sterile hallway. Mark didn't look at me. Not once. When we entered the mediation room, he sat straight, eyes fixed forward, face carved from stone. The lawyer spoke, we signed, and just like that, it was done. 17 minutes. 19 years. Gone. At the end of the meeting, I asked to speak with him. Just briefly. In private. He nodded, finally. We stepped into an empty side room. The door clicked shut behind us. I turned to him, heart pounding. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" he asked, voice flat. "For being there. For helping me raise Sienna and Aiden. For giving me this child, even if," his voice cut through mine, "this child deserves better than what you gave the rest of us." I nodded. I had no defense. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "I don't hate you, Vanessa. I just don't know you anymore, and I don't want to." I didn't cry. Not until he left the room. Not until I was truly, fully alone. By Christmas, the house was half empty. Mark took his tools, his books, the framed photograph of the kids at Lake Dillon. The kids stayed with him for the holiday. They didn't call. No presents. No cards. No carols. Just snow outside the window and a stack of unopened baby onesies in the corner. I told myself to be strong for the baby, but I was drowning in silence, and no one was reaching in to pull me out. January 26th, 2024. The day my son was born. It was snowing again, thicker this time, relentless. The kind of storm that makes everything feel suspended, like the world has stopped breathing for a moment just to witness something sacred or tragic. My water broke at 2:43 a.m. I was alone. No one to wake. No bag packed. No hand to squeeze. Just me and Lucy, who stood in the hallway, tail stiff, as if she knew something monumental had just shifted. I drove myself to the hospital. Every contraction was a memory. Every mile was a confession. I didn't scream in labor. I didn't cry. I clenched my teeth and breathed through the pain, because pain by then had become familiar, predictable, even deserved. He was born at 6:21 a.m., 6 pounds, 7 ounces, healthy, quiet, wide-eyed, with Mark's chin and Aiden's exact eyebrows. I named him Nathaniel, meaning God has given. But in that quiet room under dim lights, surrounded by nurses who called me Mama and smiled like I was whole, I had never felt so broken. There were no visitors, no flowers, no one waiting to see him through the nursery glass. Just me, and a silence so thick it curled around my throat. That evening I texted the kids. "He's here. His name is Nathaniel. I wanted you to know." No response for hours. Then, late that night, a single photo came through. Sienna holding Nathaniel, Aiden beside her, smiling weakly, and standing just behind them, out of focus but unmistakable, Mark. I stared at the photo for minutes, hands shaking. They had come, without telling me. They had visited my son without me. It was then that I realized they weren't returning because they forgave me. They weren't there for me at all. They were there for him. For Nathaniel. The next morning, the nurse said, "Your daughter stopped by last night. She left this." It was a stuffed elephant, gray, worn around the ears, the same one Sienna had as a child. Tied to its ear was a note. "He didn't ask to be born into this. He deserves everything good." I held the elephant close and tried not to cry, because I understood now. My family wasn't rebuilding itself around me. They were building a ring around my son without letting me in. And maybe that was what true consequence looked like. Not rage, not screaming, but being left out of the circle, even as it forms right in front of you. February bled into March like one long, sleepless day. The house no longer echoed. It whispered. Soft cries in the night, diaper changes, bottles warmed with shaky hands, and sometimes the sound of almost calling Mark, almost asking for help, almost pretending this wasn't all my fault. But I didn't call, and he didn't offer. Then, on a Friday morning in early March 8th, I think, there was a knock at the door. I froze. Lucy didn't bark. When I opened it, Mark stood there. No flowers, no apology, just a takeout bag in his hand and exhaustion in his eyes. I figured you hadn't eaten, he said. I moved aside. He stepped in. That was the first time we shared a meal since the divorce. We didn't talk about us. Not once. Just about Nathaniel, his sleep schedule, the formula brand that worked best, how he already curled his fists like Aiden used to when he got fussy. Mark stayed for 3 hours that night, and then he came back the next, and the next. By April it was routine. He'd come straight from work, hold the baby while I cooked, sometimes bring dinner himself. We'd trade off burping and diapers. He'd leave before midnight, always with the same words. Text me if he cries too long. But never once did he sleep over. Never once did he reach for my hand. And I didn't dare reach for his. People started noticing. My neighbor, Mrs. Callahan, asked if we were working things out. I smiled. We're co-parenting. Inside, I wanted to scream. I don't know what we're doing. I just don't want to lose the small piece of him I still have. Even the kids began to soften. Sienna would drop by after classes, bring little outfits, fold laundry while watching Nathaniel nap. Aiden helped install blackout curtains in the nursery. They never stayed long, but they came, and that, for me, was everything. Still, there were boundaries, unspoken but sharp. Mark never touched me unless it was to pass the baby. Sienna never called me Mom, unless Nathaniel was around. Aiden never asked how I was. I didn't push, because I knew this was grace, not reconciliation, not healing, just the barest thread between what I had and what I'd ruined. One night, after Nathaniel had finally gone down without a fight, Mark stood at the front door, keys in hand, coat half buttoned. He looked at me like he wanted to say something, but instead he asked, "Do you need anything tomorrow?" "No," I whispered. "We're good." He nodded. "Okay." And then, as he turned to leave, I said, too quietly, "I miss you." He didn't stop. He didn't respond. He just walked into the night, and the door clicked shut like the end of a sentence I didn't get to finish. I stood there for a long time, staring at the door, listening to Lucy whine gently beside me, and I thought maybe this was all I'd ever get. Not love, not redemption, just proximity. A man who once adored me, now showing up for our son, but never for me again. And I couldn't even blame him, because deep down, I didn't know if I would have taken me back either. May 2024. The baby just turned 3 months old. He smiles now, big, gummy grins that melt every wall inside me. He coos when the sun hits his bassinet just right. He kicks when I read to him in the morning. And sometimes when I whisper I'm sorry against his forehead, he falls asleep like he forgives me without knowing what I've done. Mark comes by most evenings, always punctual, always calm. But now he doesn't sit. He stays standing, feeds the baby, changes one diaper, then quietly leaves. His eyes are gentle with Nathaniel, not with me. We no longer talk about the past. We also never talk about the future. He's moved on. I can feel it in the way he brushes past me like I'm furniture, in the way his ring is gone and there's no indentation where it once was. I heard from a mutual friend last week. He's seeing someone, a woman from his office. Quiet, sweet, never married. She hasn't met Nathaniel yet, but she will, and I'll have to be okay with that. Sienna still calls once a week. She doesn't say, "I forgive you," but she lets me send her photos. She asks how Nathaniel's doing. She tells me when she has midterms. And once, just once, she texted, "You were still a good mom. You just weren't a good wife." I stared at that message for hours. because it was the closest thing to grace I'd been given. Aiden is slower to come around. He hasn't said much, but he drops off groceries once in a while, leaves them on the porch. No note, just enough to say, I haven't forgotten you exist. That's more than I deserve. And me? I've stopped waiting for redemption. Stopped fantasizing about waking up and finding everything back the way it was. I know that fantasy is just another way of running from the truth. The truth is, I broke something sacred. Not just a vow, not just a marriage. I broke the version of myself that was worthy of their love. And now I'm learning how to live with the woman who remains. It's not glamorous. It's not inspiring, but it's real. I take care of my son. I keep the house warm. I pay my bills. I wake up at 3 a.m. with a bottle in my hand and shame in my chest, and I still sing to him like I'm whole, because he deserves a mother who tries, even if I will never again be the wife Mark once believed in. To those who might stumble upon this story and think she deserved what she got, I won't argue. You're probably right. To those who say one mistake doesn't define a person, I wish that were true. But some mistakes don't just define you. They replace you. So if you're reading this and you're standing at the edge of a lie you haven't told yet, a temptation you haven't followed through on, a text you haven't sent, don't. Because there are some doors you open that never close again. And no matter how many lullabies you sing afterward, you'll never silence the sound of the one who walked away.